Mataji, and let's start. Jai Shriman Narayan, Jai Jagannath.
Jai Shriman Narayana, Jai Jagannath.
Here we are. So thank you for your participation in this work of, explaining the Vedic knowledge and history, texts and history. So let's see. Yeah, it is recording. So we can close this. And we wanted to talk about Vedanta. So please introduce the topic, the subject.
Thank you, Mataji, and my obeisances to you as always. What I'd like to sort of ask you today is that when we sort of enter this path, we are confronted with the topic of two important themes. The first, Mataji, is duality. What is duality? What isn't duality? When should we refer to the term duality? When should we not? And in parallel to that, Mataji, we come across Vedanta, the concept of Vedanta, the philosophy of Vedanta, and within that, Mataji, we come across advaita, we come across dvaita, we come across Adi Shankaracharya, we come across Madhvacharya, we come across so many different sorts of schools of thought within, if that is an incorrect word, within Vedanta, and it can sometimes be a little bit confusing to the neophyte like yourself. So what I'd like to ask you first is, what is duality in Sanatana Dharma? And secondly, what is Vedanta? Is there a difference between Advaita and Dvaita? And could you sort of elaborate on these teachings and how best to approach and frame it? So I'm very grateful for your thoughts here, Mataji.
Yeah, okay, welcome. So now I have a few texts to present, some extracts from some text. Like one of these is my book on Jagannath and Puri, which in its introduction, I'm just looking at the introduction, the first part, which explains the basic concepts of Hinduism and Vedic tradition. And we have the little section about Advaita and Dvaita and the Sampradayas. So according to most people have come to know about Vedic knowledge, and especially Bhagavad Gita, from the Gaudiya Maths and their developments, such as ISKCON and similar organizations. So they consider the information that are given out, distributed by this tradition, we can call it, and which they call Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Okay, so according to Gaudiya Vaishnavism itself, there are four main Vaishnava Sampradayas. So, apart from the Shankara Sampradaya, that is not considered specifically Vaishnava, but in fact it is, but anyway, we can go, for example, here, the new Sampradayas, blah, blah, okay. We have the Ramanujacharya, who lived in the 12th century, born in 1016, propagated the doctrine called Vishishta Advaita, which means the oneness with varieties of the Lord and his energies, which is, according to the Shastra, according to Bhagavad Gita. Then we have the Ramanandis that are branched off from the Ramanujacharya. Then we have the Madhvacharya, who lived in 13th century, born in 1238, propagated the doctrine called Vishishta Dvaita, which means duality with varieties, which is total duality. Because varieties is just a reinforcement of the concept of duality. Right? Because variety means not one, various, more than one, which means duality. Then also Vishnu Swami Balabhacharya were quoted as propagating the doctrine called Shuddha Dvaita, pure transcendental duality, Shuddha Dvaita, and then Nimbarka, who propagated the doctrine called bheda-abheda, or simultaneous oneness and duality. Now, the conclusion attributed to Krishna Chaitanya, which is supposed to be the foundation for the Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, is called acintya bheda-abheda tattva. So, acintya bheda-abheda is most similar to the conclusions of Nimbarka, which means simultaneous oneness and duality. Dvaita-advaita is like bheda-abheda. Right? Now, it is not compatible with Madhva, because Madhva doesn't give the inconceivable simultaneous duality and non-duality. It is reinforcing the concept of duality. We could call it bheda-abheda without the negative a to the second word, the second term, which we have seen. Okay, this is the Puri book, and we close this one. And we have seen the life of Krishna Chaitanya and also Why I Became a Hindu. In the book Why I Became a Hindu, which has been published in English, and I'm trying to translate it in Italian, we have one chapter about Krishna Chaitanya, Mirabai, Tulsidas, I think Krishna Chaitanya, Nayanas. So there are lots of interesting information on the various traditions of Hinduism. And we come to the Manikaja, blah, blah. Okay, one sec, we come Saiva Siddhanta, Kashmiri Shaivism, and then Varkari. Varkari tradition is very important, but not many people know it. The Gaudiya Vaishnava have no idea who are the Varkaris. The Ditya Vitoba, they have very little idea who are the Nayanas and the Alvars, but okay. And then we have all the other traditions that are not mentioned by the Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, which mention only Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Vishnu Swami. So all the Barkaris, all the Alvars, Nayanar, nothing. They don't exist for them, which is stupid and very ignorant. Then we continue. We have the present time representatives of these. We have Madhavadev, which should not be confused with Madhvacharya. Then we have the Haridasas. And we come to Madhva, also called Ananda Tirtha, Purna Pragya, Sukha Tirtha, blah blah blah, should not be confused with Madhava Acharya. That is another name for Vidyaranya or Vidyaranya and Sayanacharya of the Shankara line, the 12th guru of the Shingari Sardapit. Okay, then we go definition of Ekadandi Vaishnava, about all the whole story of the Madhva and his ideas, the works, his writings. And one interesting thing that I notice is that as I'm writing here, Madhva's works, however, are not free from controversy. He said to have quote non-existent verses from known scriptures, such as Skanda Purana, Padma Purana, etc., and even passages from totally unknown, possibly non-existent texts, such as Upagita, Kamata Shruti, Karma Viveka, Kalapa Shruti, blah, 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 blah. So, nobody has ever mentioned those such texts before or produced them. So naturally, many scholars have expressed serious doubts about the authenticity of the quotes. According to Madhva, only caste Brahmins are eligible for moksha, and furthermore Sanjivas, Nityabandhas, are considered constitutionally incapable of attaining liberation even after any number of births. Also, Lakshmi is considered an ordinary jiva, and the worship of Radha is considered totally bogus, not only because Radha is considered an ordinary jiva and even rather simple-minded village girl, but because only Aishwarya Ras is acceptable, while Madhurya Ras is considered an indecent deviation. Therefore, there is no trace of intimate bhakti, and even Vatsalya and Sakya Ras are not accepted as genuine relationships that the devotee can develop toward Krishna. The followers of Madhva worship Gopala alone. However, a positive aspect of Madhva's tradition is a liberal social approach in the sense that it allows access to its temple to all without any birth discrimination. Of course, not because they think that everybody can get liberation, but because, we are nice, they're nice people. So we have the other people, then Puri Jagannath, okay. Then we have to find out Chaitanya, which I don't remember exactly which page it was. Let's see, we find it here, because otherwise we are going to go around and round and round and round. Baba Haridas, blah, blah. Lots of people. I collected a lot of interesting information. Okay, we have Madhamata. After Puri Jagannath, some famous devotees of Jagannath, Buddhism as a Hindu movement, Jayadeva Goswami, the Bowls, Madhavendra Puri, Ramananda Rai, Uriya Vaishnavism, Atibadi Jagannath Das, Balaram Das, Achyutananda Das, Ishananta Das, Yashodhanta Das, Salabega, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Krishna Chaitanya, Nityananda Parivar, Shri Krishna Prem, which is a very unknown person, but he was a very important personality. Then we have Advaita Parivar, Wandra Companion, Six Goswamis, and conclusions. So we go to the Gaudiya Vaishnavism, that is page 233. Whoopa! 233, Puri Jagannath. And we are not going to talk so much about the Uriya Vaishnavas, otherwise we are going to end up 2-3 hours of meeting, and I think it's not very practical. So we're going to 3 Madhavendra Puri. According to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Madhavendra Puri was the guru of Vishwara Puri, the guru of Krishna Chaitanya, Nityananda, and Advaita. In his Gaura Ganodesha Dipika, Kavi Karnapura clearly states that Madhavendra was a founder of a new sampradaya, Yadharma Yak Pravartita, that ideologically unites the lineage of Adi Shankara, the tradition of Nimbarka, and the bhakti sentiments of the Bowls. So here we have nothing about Madhva. Here we come about Madhva. After the time of Baladeva Vidyabhushana, Gaudiya sources started to claim that Madhavendra Puri, 1490, had also accepted a guru in the Madhva line of Udupi, named Lakshmipati Tirtha, Gaudiya sources, after that, who was a disciple of Vyasatirtha. However, this information remains seriously controversial for several reasons we will analyze later on. What is not controversial at all is the idea that Krishna Chaitanya's feelings of separation, viraha, in the romantic mood Sringara Rasa from Krishna, had developed from a single verse spoken by Madhavendra Puri. Ai dina dayardranat, ematuranat kada avalokya se. Hridayam tvad aloka kataram daita brahmyati kim karotyaham. O Lord, protector of Mathura, you are compassionate to the suffering people. When shall I be able to see you again? my love, your absence is so painful that my mind has become restless. What am I to do? This verse is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 4.197, as spoken by Radha, and representing the Rasa Kavya, the greatest masterpiece of the Rasa literature, the Kaustubha among all precious jewels, and the cause of immediate and overwhelming ecstasy in Krishna Chaitanya. Madhavendra Puri is mentioned importantly in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavata, Chaitanya Mangala, Gauraganodesha Deepika, Bhakti Ratnakara, Prameya Ratnavali, and in the writings of Gopala Guru Goswami. Vrindavan Das wrote, Madhavendra Puri is completely filled with divine love, and so were his followers. So ecstatic was his love for Krishna that he would lose consciousness at the sight of a dark blue rain cloud. Day and night he was intoxicated from drinking the ambrosia of Krishna Prema. So we have all the story about Madhavendra Puri after he arrives in Vrindavan. Then we have Balabhacharya, the name of Andaranda Puri, Kshirachara Gopinath, Charitamrita. Then we have Impuri, then we have the Chandana Yatra, and Ramananda. Okay, then we have Ramananda Roy, who was one of the four sons of Bhavananda Patanaik, was originally from Orissa. Then we have Oriya Vaishnavism. We said we're going to just jump over. Achyutananda Salabhega is another extremely important person in Puri, Jagannath Puri. Speaking of the revival, definition Gaudiya Vaishnava, the last king of the Gauda Bengal region was Lakshman Sena, which is 1179-1206, who was a contemporary of Jayadeva Goswami. Now, when Chaitanya appeared, the Bengal had already been under the Muslims for at least 200 to 300 years. So we have to keep that into consideration. Gaudiya Vaishnava is generally identified with Krishna Chaitanya, often described as a great Bengali saint, who established a massive bhakti movement in the region. But practically all the information generally circulating until now about Gaudiya Vaishnavism has been produced under a rather unilateral bias by the Saraswata Gaudiyas, which are the Gaudiya Matas and ISKCON, that claim to be the only true representatives of Chaitanya disciplic lineage as a Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, usually detailed as follows. Krishna, Brahma, Narada, Vyasa, Madhva, Padmanabha, blah, 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 blah. Then we come to Ishwar Madhavendra Puri, Ishwara Puri, Krishna Chaitanya, Rupa, Raghunath, Krishna Das, Narottam, Vishwanatha Chakravarti, and so on. Jagannath Das Babaji, but The Guru in position number 21 in this list, Ishwara Puri, is presented the spiritual link that connects Krishna, Chaitanya, and his followers to the Madhvacharya lineage through the famous Madhavendra Puri. We said to have also initiated Advaita and Nityananda, the closest companions of Chaitanya. However, a controversy about the historical value of such a disciplic succession has been going on for over 200 years. And more importantly, the mainstream Madhvacharya Sampradaya vehemently denies any connection with Chaitanya and Gaudiya Vaishnavism, as we can see from the official position paper on ISKCON published in May 2001 by the Purna Pragya Vidyapita, founded by Vishvesha Tirtha Swami of Pejavarnath in Bangalore, with the official approval of Vidyamanya Tirtha of Palimaru Bandarakeri Math, followed by the Pejavar Swami's explicit message to the followers of ISKCON, asking that their bogus claims be withdrawn. You're still there, huh? You're still alive.
I am still there. I'm following this. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, the connection may not be brilliant, but just in case, if the connection falls, just come back, I will be here. Okay, so in the Madhva tradition, as given by the mainstream Udupi Math, we find the following disciplic succession. Hamsa Paramatma, so not Krishna. Chaturmukhi Brahma, we have Brahma. Then we have Sanakadi, Sanaka and the others, meaning the four Kumaras. Then we have Durvasa, which is like What? And Gyananidhi, Garudavahana, Kavalyatirtha, blah blah blah, Preksha Charyatirtha, Madhvacharya. Historical dates of these links are not given, but they're not particularly important. However, we remember that according to the Saraswati Gaudiya Parampara version, Madhvacharya is supposed to have taken initiation, Diksha, directly from Vyasa, which is not mentioned by the Madhva tradition. And that Durvasa is nowhere to be seen in the lineage, although according to some, one version, the 5 non-sober of the Saraswati Gaudiya Parampara mentions the Kumaras. On the other hand, the succession given by the Udupi Mat does not mention Narada or Vyasa at all, and there is no mention of Krishna either, but the Vishnu avatar Hamsa is clearly mentioned. The mainstream Madhvacharya Mat in Udupi says that Madhvacharya was born around 1119 or 11, and had 4 direct disciples, and blah 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 blah. According to the Saraswati Gaudiya, the Vyasa Raj of the branch of Madhva line after Ajenda Tirtha is supposed to have been the Vyasa Tirtha, appearing as number 18 in their own list as the guru of Lakshmipati, a person whose historical existence is strongly denied by the Madhva Sampradaya. Okay. According to the Saraswati Gaudiya, this Lakshmipati, 1420-1487, is identified as Lakshmi Narayana Tirtha or Shripada Raj, presented as a cousin, son of mother's sister, of the same age as Vyasa Tirtha, and pontiff of the Mat of Padmanabha Tirtha at Mulbagal as the 7th descendant and successor to Swarnavarna Tirtha. We are not interested in determining exactly the lineage of Lakshmipati of Vyasa Tirtha, but there is plenty of historical record about Vyasa Tirtha, the very famous and respected author of Nyayamrita, Tatparya Chandrika, and Tarka Tandava, who was the main religious inspiration for the Vijayanagar Hindu Empire, now known as Hampi, and considered to have once been the Kishkinda forest of Ramayana. And according to the Saraswati Gaudiya sources, he became known for his radical statements regarding Brahmanism, Vaishnavism, Varnashram, and who was worthy to worship the Lord. However, this Vyasa Tirtha was a disciple of Brahmanya Tirtha and lived between 1460 and 1539, which means that he had survived Chaitanya for more than 5 years, and resided in Vijayanagar, just south of the kingdom of Prataparudra. Yet, neither Chaitanya or any of his associates ever made any attempt to visit him to pay their respects, or even ever mention him. Even more interesting, according to the tradition of the Madhva Sampradaya, a disciple only becomes initiating guru after the demise of his own guru. Otherwise, he is expected to bring the aspirant disciples to his own living guru. Therefore, we would have to believe that Lakshmipati, the guru of Madhavendra Puri, who was in turn the guru of Ishvara Puri, would only have become initiating guru 5 years after Chaitanya's disappearance. Okay. You're getting better.
Yes, absolutely. Please
and we are specifically talking about the dvaita-advaita thing here. Now, as we have briefly mentioned in a previous section, among the macroscopic ideological differences between Chaitanya and the Madhvacharya Sampradaya, we need to highlight the fact that according to Madhvacharya's absolute duality, Vishishta Dvaita, the Devas, including Shiva Mahadev, are merely devotees of Vishnu and not his angas or manifestations. Lakshmi is an ordinary jiva, Radha should never be worshipped as she is a fabrication, and intimate love for God, Raganuga Prema, is not possible, relevant or even desirable. Even more important, the highest representatives of the Madhvacharya lineage express nothing less than outrage at the idea that Krishna's personality can be considered more complete or original than the other Vishnu personalities, and especially resent the proposition that Krishna Chaitanya can be considered an avatar or a direct manifestation of Krishna, an idea that has even become the fundamental point of Siddhanta for some Gaudiyas. According to Madhvacharyas, only caste Brahmins born of Indian race are eligible for liberation, while some souls, Vadas, can never attain liberation because they are eternally conditioned by implicit nature. In this perspective, the Atman is never transcendentally pure, but is intrinsically and constitutionally subject to the material gunas. Therefore, there are sattvika jivas who can attain mukti, rajasika jivas destined to always remain in samsara, but with the possibility of making some progress, and tamasika jivas, hopelessly destined to hell or darkness. Okay, then we again, see there. Now and then, please give a,
No. I'm listening. What I'm really interested in is sort of the conclusion that you come to. So what?
Well, no, it's really not the conclusion, Vishwajit. It's information.
Yeah. Yes.
That's not about my conclusions. I did not arrive at these conclusions.
No, not at all. It's just that obviously from the neophyte we get all these like names, and what I'm trying to do in my mind is relate this to what which is you have advaita, and then you have dvaita, and then you're almost taught that these are conflicting schools of thought, and there are
they are people are taught that dvaita is a legitimate school of thought, but let's see how many times is Krishna in Bhagavad Gita mentioning that the duality is the root of all illusion and ignorance. Just let's find,
So Mataji, before that, could you please define for me and others that might be listening what duality is and what it isn't, if that's okay, and then we'll get into that so that we can get that clear understanding from the outset.
Yeah. Okay. Duality means that we don't see God everywhere. We don't see Vishnu everywhere. There is Vishnu and non-Vishnu.
Yes.
Basically. Yes. And the Jiva is not Brahman. Which is the contradiction, direct contradiction to the Upanishad Mahavakyas, and also, the contradiction in Bhagavad Gita, so we can go and check. So duality means that according to the people who believe that duality, dvaita, is an actual legitimate, spiritual perspective, the jiva is always separated from Vishnu. There can be no union. Something that is openly contradicted in Bhagavad Gita many times. Like Krishna says, Vishate tadanantaram, they enter in me. They become one with me, which is obviously defined as advaita, which means non-duality. So we can go and see how many times Bhagavad Gita, mentions that dvaita is the illusion which could be created either by Mahamaya or Yogamaya. Still, it is illusion. The feeling of duality means Krishna is here, Krishna is not here, is created by Yogamaya for the purpose of enhancing the devotion in the sentiments of separation, vipralambaras. But it is not a complete illusion, because the devotee who is immersed in the Vipralambaras still knows, is still conscious that Krishna is everywhere. Krishna is the Supreme Soul, the Paramatma. Krishna is the Supreme Brahman. Krishna is Vishnu. Krishna is everywhere. He never goes away. It's just the impression that he is not present, because that brings the devotee to experience Krishna's presence even more intensely. Okay. On the other hand, the duality manifested by Mahamaya is actually giving the impression that God is not omnipresent, in fact. That God is only in some place at some time. So God is limited by time, place, individuality, circumstances. So he has a material body, in other words.
This is perfect, Mataji. So can I ask you then?
Sure.
On that note, two things. The first is that why did dvaita gain such legitimacy, and why is it given prominence? And so that's my first question to you, Mataji. And then my second question, Mataji, is that we are taught as neophytes, or we sometimes come to the conclusion as neophytes, that we have Adi Shankaracharya on one hand, within Advaita, we have Adi Shankaracharya on one hand, and then we have the teachings of Ramanuja Acharya on the other hand. And I'd just like you to answer those two, or expand on those two questions, or those 2 points that I've raised.
Okay. Now, we have the conclusion that is attributed to Krishna Chaitanya, which is acintya, bheda-abheda, which is reconciling all the various perspectives except the interpretation by Madhva. All the other interpretations are compatible with the concept of acintya, bheda-abheda, except the conclusion of Madhva, who is insisting on duality. Now, how did Madhvacharya's conclusions become prominent? They only became prominent with the expansion of ISKCON. Before the Sarasvata Gaudiya movement, Madhva, the line of Madhva was not prominent at all. In fact, it was restricted basically to a small, very small influence in some parts of South India. To dharmats, basically. And because they were not preaching so much, their prominence was very limited. Then why did Bhaktivinoda choose Madhva, in creating this Sarasvata Gaudiya Sampradaya Parampara line? I believe it was because the Shankaracharya line was too strong and powerful and well known and active, and they would never allow Bhaktivinoda to use their name to develop the Gaudiya Math. So he chose the Madhva Sampradaya because they didn't even, the Madhva Sampradaya, they didn't even come to know about ISKCON until the year 2000, until 20 years ago. Before that, they didn't even notice that the ISKCON and the Gaudiya Maths were using their name in their Sampradaya.
That's excellent. And therefore, Mataji, we are sometimes taught that there is a difference between the teachings of Adi Shankaracharya, who teaches pure advaita, forgive me, in quote unquote, pure advaita, whereas
not mine. Adi Shankara taught the actual advaita, which is not what the many uninformed or prejudiced people think. Like, for example, they say that Shankara taught against bhakti, which is totally bogus, because we just have to read, for example, the Gita Mahatmya by Adi Shankara, where he says that, literally say, let there be one deity only, that will be Krishna, Devaki Nandana. Let there be one Shastra only, that will be the Bhagavad Gita spoken by Krishna. How is that against bhakti? And the famous Bhaja Govindam song, where is it against bhakti? And the Jagannathastaka, which is repeated by those same people, chanted by those same people during the Ratha Yatra and in worship of Jagannath, Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me, was written by Adi Shankara. And Adi Shankara wrote also many poems about bhakti, besides these ones. So Adi Shankara was totally in favor of bhakti.
So, Mataji,
yeah.
on that point, we are also taught, and please, this is just a perception, and I'd like to be corrected here. We are also taught that Adi Shankaracharya and Advaita taught that the material world is simply illusion and not real. The
Brahma Satya Jaganmithya.
Or has this been interpreted in the wrong fashion? I'd like just you to explain that.
Yeah, but that is also what what Krishna says, and what we're supposed. All the Shastras are saying that the material world is illusory because material energy constantly changes. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clearly says, asato. Okay, let me check, because we have here the Bhagavad Gita only verses. And we
whilst
find
you're doing that, whilst you're doing that, Mataji, there's a difference, I guess, between illusory and illusion. I think that would you say?
No, that is the same thing. Illusion is the substantive, the noun, and illusory is the adjective created from the noun. There is absolutely no difference. Just like avatara and avatari, which is, imagined to be two different terms. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita we find a very interesting verse saying that avatara means one who is, avatari is one who becomes avatar. So avatari applies to all the avatars, not just to Krishna.
So, Mataji, there is to be a perception that the school of thought that Ramanuja Acharya teaches is very different from Adi Shankaracharya.
It's not very different. It's not very different. It's just a subsequent elaboration, of the more emphasis on the bhakti, especially to Sri Ram. While Adi Shankara was more interested in establishing that without the Brahman realization, one cannot attain bhakti. While Ramanuja said, okay, no, yeah, well, even if you're not on the Brahman realization, it's sufficient you renounce the material attachment, and then you can be a devotee. That's the only difference.
What did Adi Shankaracharya say prior to that, Mataji? Did he say that you need to realize Brahma? Can you explain what you just said there in more detail?
Okay, 1 minute. Let's conclude here this illusion, okay? The material world is illusion. Then the verse 2:16 of the Bhagavad Gita says, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata. Ubhayor api drishtantas tvanayos tattvadarshibhi. Those who see the truth know that what is illusory, temporary, bad, asat, will not continue to be, while what is real, eternal, good, sat, will never be destroyed. They have carefully observed both things and reached this conclusion. So, Krishna, from the second chapter, from the beginning of his instructions, he's clearly establishing the difference between the kshetra and the kshetriya, saying the kshetra is constantly changing and is not really permanent. It's perishable, will be destroyed. All these material bodies are destined to end. I
completely understand that.
Yeah, while he is in these bodies, is said to be eternal. So we have the asat and the sat, the kshetra and the kshetriya. Now, the verse that you were mentioning, that is one, maybe is the most, the one that I prefer, my favorite verse in Bhagavad Gita. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati samaksareshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param. One who is established on the state of Brahman, Brahma bhuta, is satisfied in the self. He does not lament or hanker after anything, is equally disposed towards all beings, and attains transcendental devotion to me. Bhaktim param labhate. Labhate means attains. Bhaktim, mad bhaktim, devotion to me, param, which is transcendental. So, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is saying what actually also Ramanuja says, that it's okay, people can be devotees of Krishna at different levels. And also Krishna Chaitanya accepted this. And the six Goswamis also accepted this and described the three different levels of bhakti and realization as Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama, which in the Tantra, traditional Tantra, are called Pashu, Vira, and Deva. It's nothing. Chaitanya didn't invent anything, and definitely he didn't follow Madhvacharya. So
that's very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah, this means that without the realization of Brahman, our devotion can only be Vaidhi Bhakti, can only be Sadhana Bhakti, practice Bhakti, which gradually evolves from Pashu to Vira to Deva. Means from the animal level, which is a materialistic bodily identification, to the heroic level, which is the sadhana, the attempt, the effort, the anartha-nivritti, the development, the practice, to the study, the detachment, jnana and vairagya. And then finally, when we attain the Deva level, the Uttamadhikari level, that is the Brahma Bhuta, the transcendental level, the level of Brahman. What is Brahman? Brahman is transcendence. So if you're talking all the time about being transcendental, and you think that the Brahman realization is bad, what are you talking about? Now, in the link you sent me few days ago, this guy from ISKCON was saying that Adi Shankar, we reject Advaita and Adi Shankar because Adi Shankar said that the purpose of the jiva is to return to the Brahmajyoti. Okay, that means he doesn't, he has no idea of what Adi Shankar preached and taught. Because all the jivas, all the conditioned souls, return to the Brahmajyoti when the dissolution of the universe, puts everybody to sleep. When we have the pralaya, at the end of the day of Brahma, or at the end of the life of Brahma, what happens to the conditioned souls? They return to the Brahmajyoti. They are reabsorbed in the body of Vishnu, in the Brahmajyoti of Vishnu, because they have not attained moksha. So that's, attaining the Brahmajyoti is not moksha. It's a temporary moksha. It's not the permanent moksha. It's a kind of a temporary moksha because, you take rest. You are free from all the sufferings, from all the problems and conditionings because you're just sleeping.
So what you're saying, Mataji, is Adi Shankaracharya did not say that, did not teach that the purpose of moksha is to return to the Brahmajyoti.
Exactly.
You feel that is an incorrect assertion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So, Mataji, this whole theme where people say that Advaitans following Adi Shankaracharya, they are sometimes called impersonalists by certain people. Do you think this is correct?
Okay. Now, we know that. Sorry, the connection is a bit disturbed. Can you say it again, or otherwise I can work on what I got?
Yes, absolutely, Michael. Sometimes you hear some people that say that pure Advaitans who follow the line of Shankaracharya, they are what we call impersonalists because their end point is the Brahmajyoti. They are sometimes referred to as impersonalists. Is this an incorrect viewpoint to take?
Yeah, again, it is very incorrect. It is very incorrect because, as I was starting to say, now we have to make a clear distinction between what is actually taught by the Acharya and what is reported or understood or propagated by people who claim to be his descendants and representatives. We can observe this in all traditions. We can observe this with, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas themselves. That they're not always precisely repeating what their acharyas, were actually teaching. And they sometimes even change the presentations, without being authorized and without understanding what they're talking about. And it, of course it applies. We have seen with Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama and his followers. And we have seen with Jesus and his followers. The proof, the evidence, apart from what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sakalaneha Mahata Yoganashta. With time, the connection is lost. But also, by the fact that the so-called successors or representatives of the great acharyas, often disagree with each other. So, if they disagree, with each other, with one another, that means that someone is wrong. Or maybe both are wrong. Because if they were right, they were correct, everyone would be correct. Because everyone would say the same thing. But they don't.
Wonderful. So in essence, Mataji, what we've concluded so far is that duality is basically the incorrect viewpoint that Vishnu is not everywhere, Bhagavan is not everywhere.
Exactly, Vasudeva Sarvamiti is not true.
So what duality is the incorrect conclusion that God is not omnipotent and omnipresent. So it's to deny that nature of God, that God is not everywhere. And secondly, what duality means is that we are not part and part. What duality also implies is that we somehow are separate from God. We are not part and parcel of the supreme consciousness. So those are my understanding is that in Sanatana Dharma, the two fundamental pillars of our philosophy is that God is omnipotent. He can be anywhere and everywhere. And the second,
it's not that he can be. He already is.
Yes, that's right. He is.
Yeah, because if you say he can be, it means he can, but he's not yet. But he can if he wants.
He is. And the second point, Mataji, is that duality also means incorrectly that it also incorrectly arrives to the conclusion that we somehow are distinct units, separate from God in every single way. We are, whereas what every single legitimate Acharya has taught us in reality is that we are part and parcel of the supreme
exactly. The expression by Bhaktivedanta, we are parts and parcels. We are parts, as the jivas are parts and parcels of God. What does that mean? We are separate? No. Parts and parcel means what? We are separate? No.
And I was fascinated in how you said that what Puja did was to elaborate on Adi Shankaracharya's teachings. I would love to hear a little bit more about that. And before we get to that, there's a viewpoint that Adi Shankaracharya did what he did to combat Buddhism, quote unquote.
Not combat.
Do you agree with that?
No. The translation is not accurate, because he didn't come to combat Buddhism. He came to counteract Buddhism. Now, counteract is not the same as combating.
Of course.
So as again, the followers of Buddha sometimes went off the rails and actually became offensive towards Vedas, while Siddhartha Gautama himself never did that. Just in the same way, like Adi Shankar never said that the impersonal, the Brahman is impersonal and is a supreme aspect of God. That means that the manifestation of God, Vishnu, is material. But some of his followers went off the rails. And then they actually became impersonalists and saying, and came up to the point of saying that when the avatar appears, because he manifests through Maya, Yoga Maya, then the body of the avatar is material. But because they cannot understand the difference of function between Yoga Maya and Mahamaya, they say Maya, so they think Maya means Mahamaya. So they confuse Yoga Maya with Mahamaya, so they say, they go off the rails saying that the body of the avatars is material. Which, of course, is not a fact. Because Bhagavad Gita is saying, Janma karma chame divyam. Avajananti mammuda, tanushim tanumashritam, manushim tanumashritam. Aparam bhavam agyanto. They don't know my supreme nature. Because that supreme nature is para prakriti, is yoga maya. Then we have the apara prakriti, which is mahamaya, which is always the same person but in different functions. So the function of yoga maya is to manifest the body of the avatars. But the body of the avatars are not material bodies. But sometimes some of the people in the Shankara line, they got confused and they even came up to say this kind of stuff, garbage. But that's definitely not what Shankara said. Just like, some people who say they're representing, Chaitanya, they say that, Jesus and Muhammad are Vishnu avatars. But Chaitanya never said that. Or they're saying that Chaitanya, only worship Krishna. And, he told his followers that Maya is a witch. And we should never, worship Shiva or something like that. We saw that is simply not true. But some of those followers are claiming this garbage. And in doing that, they're defaming the name of Chaitanya. Just like some of these, foolish, so-called descendants of the Shankara line, they are actually defaming the name of Adi Shankara. But
so Mataji, what you're saying here then is that this whole connection that people are making between advaita and impersonalism is a completely false and incorrect connection to me. That's what you're saying here. Number two, what you're saying is what Ramanuja did was he did not go against Adi Shankaracharya, but rather elaborated and built on Adi Shankaracharya's teachings. Could you talk a little bit more about that for the next few minutes? I'd be fascinated to hear exactly how he elaborated, because there's a huge misconception
in this I am not very useful, because I have not studied the Ramanuja line very carefully. And in fact, I have studied Adi Shankara only marginally. So basically what I have studied is Chaitanya, which I totally believe that it is my inspiration and my guide and my ideal, and I totally 200% agree with Chaitanya. And the Bhagavad Gita, the original text of Bhagavad Gita, the original Bhagavata Purana, and the Upanishads, and the Shastra. I have not gone through much of the Veda Samhitas. I have read the Rig Veda, the Samaveda, but especially the Rig Veda, which is the most famous. I've read through it. Now I know what I'm talking about. And I have written a book that is entitled Introduction to Vedic Knowledge, where I'm presenting all this, whatever I have studied about all this, and sharing my knowledge. Also, I have gone through the Mahabharata and Ramayana and lots of the Puranas, most, the main Puranas, and the main Upanishads. I have produced in Italian one Italian translation of the 108 main Upanishads. Unfortunately, I have not been able yet to do it in English, but I think it's not difficult to find, the text. However, I have produced a translation, a summary translation of the Bhagavata Purana. Mostly with the stories, in the sense that by reading my synopsis of the Bhagavata Purana, you can actually follow the thread of the discussion. While the Bhagavata Purana, the entire text of 18,000 verses of the Bhagavata Purana, also called Srimad Bhagavatam, is complicated by the fact that there are lots of conversations within the conversations. And the subjects tend to jump up and down. So some stories are repeated, some situations, the narration is interrupted and then taken up again, several chapters later. So it can be a bit confusing. In a sense, it is good for, listening public, because it gives variety. So, otherwise people tend to get bored and to, fall asleep. So a little variety is helping. But if you want to read the Bhagavata Purana and actually, get a complete idea of what is in the Bhagavata Purana, you can get a bit confused. That is why I have done this work, which is a much smaller book than the 18,000 verses, and I am planning to integrate this synopsis with a number of smaller booklets containing the main philosophical teachings from the Bhagavata Purana, which are like, the teachings of Queen Kunti, the teachings of Kapila, like that. Because they deserve, if they are dense philosophical presentations, teachings, they deserve some, more accurate analysis with the original Sanskrit text. My summary synopsis of the Bhagavata Purana, I didn't put the Sanskrit text, I just gave all the stories, in more, condensed form, just to make a book of manageable size. Now, what I was saying is that I have not studied much about Ramanuja, so I cannot talk much about that. But from what I have seen, and I have mentioned in my book Why I Became a Hindu, I'm talking about Ramanuja a little bit. And I believe that is totally on the proper line. He's not saying anything that contradicts the general fundamental principles of Dharma and Vidya. While I cannot say the same thing about Madhva. Now, I'm not particularly interested in going deeper into Madhva. What I found out is more than sufficient to convince me that, okay, thanks, Madhva, no thanks. I'm not interested.
Understood. Understood completely.
So this
I think I needed. Yeah. This was very important to get that baseline foundation.
Exactly. And also Adi Shankar, when I prepared my translation and commentary on Bhagavad Gita, I had 3 books of Bhagavad Gita, that I, translation commentary that I was looking at. One of those was Adi Shankar's, and the other was Bhaktivedanta Swami's, and the other was Narayan Maharaj. I didn't have the Gita from Dhyaneshwar, I didn't have Ramanuja's Bhashyas, I didn't have, because we cannot do everything. But about Adi Shankar, I think I have pretty much sufficient information to say that impersonalism is not Adi Shankar's conclusion. And I will even go to the point of saying that some of these people who want to fight against the Mayavadis are the real impersonalists. For several reasons. One of the main reasons is they don't believe that we are, we have our own personal relationship with Krishna. They may be saying that, they might be saying that, but they don't demonstrate it because they want to enforce a particular relationship with Krishna on their disciples. They falsely believe, that the Guru gives the personal relationship with Krishna, gives the disciple the personal relationship with Krishna at the time of initiation, which implies a totally impersonalistic view of the jivas. Means the jivas are nothing. They don't know anything. They don't have any relationship with Krishna. They don't have any individuality. They have to be built, created, fashioned, rubber stamped, produced in mass through the factory system. And that's impersonalism. Another very important sign of the actual impersonalists is that they don't believe in the personal relationship between guru and disciple. They falsely believe that the guru is not responsible for the development of the disciple because the guru is just like the postman, it's just the representative. So it's not responsible, it doesn't have to be qualified, it doesn't have to be realized, and it's not his problem. If the disciple is not attaining the proper level, it's, because he's not responsible. And he doesn't have any personal relationship with the disciple. They hardly know their names of the disciple. The names they gave themselves to the disciple, they don't remember. They have no idea. They don't care.
And that makes complete sense. And it's not necessarily at all what Adi Shankaracharya taught in
Exactly. Adi Shankar certainly didn't support this kind of mentality.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I think, Mataji, this whole discussion has been very useful to gain that understanding. And I think what I'm now going to do is perhaps read some further books, further sort of your work on the Bhagavata Purana and the Rig Veda to then sort of come back with some more thoughts.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So we go on, and here in the this is again why I became a Hindu. I recommend these parts, and goes on with the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Shankaracharya. It goes on for several pages, and then we have again. Krishna Chaitanya himself, so, yeah, okay. I think we have done our part for today.
And I'd like to thank you for your time, Mataji.
Thanks to you.
Absorbing discussion, and look forward to our next topic and discussion.
Same here. Jai Jagannath, Jai Shriman Narayana.
Jai Jagannath.